Good evening. Welcome to Barnes & Noble. I'm very happy to welcome you back to the new season of Brooklyn Poetry Outreach Open Mic.
Seventh year.
Seventh year, hosted by our dear friend, Ken Siegelman. I'm glad to see you guys back. I recognize so many of you guys come all the time. Good to see you. Hope you all had a great summer. We're all here because of Ken's goal to have a venue for the poets of Brooklyn to showcase and share their work. He's the author of 10 books of poetry, including City Souls, and because of his great love for and dedication to his work, he is the subject of the docudrama Fading to Zero, which premiered this May. Mr. Siegelman has mentored countless young poets and is a friend to all who love poetry and recognize the power of words to change the world. Now that summer is officially over, we will once again host Brooklyn Poetry Outreach Open Mic once a month. It is only fitting that we kick off this new season with Ken Siegelman as the featured poet. So we are honored to have him with us. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brooklyn's Poet Laureate, Ken Siegelman.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say a few words before I introduce Liz Koch, who is the Arts and Culture Specialist for the Borough President. I want to thank Marty Markowitz, not just for having appointed me, but for giving me the widest possible latitude and liberation to use poetry in a variety of places, from the rehab, and Phoenix House, and all through out to regular, authentic quote poets. When I first got the job, I remember wanting to work with some of the old timers who had had this position before, and they said, "We don't know who you are." And I said, "Well, I don't know who you are." But the position of the Poet Laureate should be one to build bridges to other poets. So if I extend my hand, and I noticed when I was doing it they had a lighter on, I said, "You know something? If I can't work with you, I'll work around you." And I didn't realize at that time how true it was that there are 2.5, 3 million people in Brooklyn. It's a city unto itself. And there is so much talent that went untapped by narcissistic poets from certain parts of Brooklyn who believed that they were the elite force in poetry in New York. And they were really talking to themselves. And thank Marty for giving me that opportunity to bring other people. In my program, Alcoholics Anonymous, I learned a long time ago that in order to keep things, you have to give it away. And I understood what that meant logically, but I never knew what it meant internally, emotionally, until I started becoming Poet Laureate. My God, could you imagine having to listen to the same guy every month just because he has the position of Poet Laureate? I don't think you'd want it. I know I wouldn't. I'd be bored myself. Let me take this opportunity to ask Liz Koch, who is, as I say, art and culture specialist for the Borough President, to say a few words. I want to say one thing in her behalf. This is a woman who certainly, more than anything, is underpaid. The book fair, the Brooklyn Book Fair, was one of the most I looked behind it, one of the most complicated possible arrangements of literary talent, spanning the gap from young people to old poets to authors to everyone. And she did a job that I could not even begin to handle. With that, I give you Liz.
Thank you, Ken. No one can ever argue when someone says you're underpaid.
Well, I guess it was being politically diplomatic, but it's true. It's true.
The fall season in Brooklyn, the literary season, always begins with Brooklyn Poetry Outreach, so it's a wonderful thing to be here today and have Ken be the featured poet for launching the season. It was amazing to me when 7 years was mentioned, because it doesn't seem that long, but during that time so many people have come through this room and have had the opportunity to be part of this program. So it's a truly wonderful thing that Ken has created. He opened the book festival for us this year, which was a really great thing on the main stage at Borough Hall.
Thank you so much.
And we did have, during the course of the day, 20,000 people come. Wow. So we know that Marty believes that Brooklyn is the literary center of the world, and I think that kind of proves his point that there are so many people coming out to enjoy the written word and to appreciate the authors that we not only have in Brooklyn but across the country. Enjoy the evening, and another great season begins.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you so much. Okay, I want to thank all of you for coming here tonight. Without you, without shared talent, there is no talent. To be a solitary prisoner with the written or spoken word in a cell by yourself is not sharing talent. This is an opportunity for all of us. And I'd like to thank you for coming. I thank the borough president. I thank Liz. I thank Barnes & Noble for affording me this opportunity. I'm sure you're aware, and you are savvy people, that it's not easy to get a position, a spot in Barnes & Noble Park Slope, where everything is dependent on the community relations director, in this case Peaches Davis. And it's a wonderful thing. So I was able to negotiate it, brought it back to Marty. He said, okay. I went to Phoenix House. I worked there with a number of people, brought it back to Marty. He said, good. This is so wonderful to work with that kind of freedom. I never will, I will never forget it. And it's so wonderful. All right, let me begin. Today, in this time of dismal crisis in our country, only now do some Americans, at times like this, do some Americans begin to question and look at the darker side of the American value system. Because now we're vulnerable. Now things aren't as normal. People aren't getting richer, buying bigger homes, buying bigger cars, buying bigger diamond rings. It's not America as they're used to it. But this darker side to our value system of free enterprise and private property has always been there. Only now I might have a better audience for it than I did at earlier times. Private property. The man who stood alone and free on a mountaintop in Tennessee named the mountain for his family, as if the Indian burial grounds were invisible in every thicket he passed through daily hunting game. He carved the forest with his axe in a clearing all around the house he built to better see whoever might advance on him. In his loneliness, he came to see his rifles as a guarantee that other men would stay away or detour miles around to find a mountain of their own. His cabin steamed in summer in its shadeless clearing, so he took to camping out all day and night, but worried if some passing pilgrim or Indian would occupy his empty home while he was away. He fenced his property all around, but found the deer grew scarce inside his little kingdom. So he branded them as his inside his mind and tracked them yards outside his fence, where another mountain king shot him through the head for trespassing on private property. She is the best I've ever met in my life, and
I
she's
better
far
record
better
this.
than I deserve. Poets love poems. You began each observation with commonplace disclosures, yet moved on from thinking of oaks as bold and solid to the subtleties, what they may feel like when fall begins to rapier their leaves and winter swords off their smaller branches, which seem so formidable in later spring. You always favored the runt in every litter, however unappealing to one's eyes, with its sickened whimpering, teetering at the edge of death, and splotchy coat of uncoordinated colors, where something you saw as beautiful had no equilibrium, while its mucused eyes seemed unable to see forms of anything beyond light or dark. When we struggled through the deepest snow just to make it home, you told me that our fireplace would never look or feel as good as we imagined it with freezing feet, struggling to gain a footing in a foot or two of snow. You reminded me that often, how often I missed the obvious, which made my similes and metaphors weaker in the end. You never wrote a poem, yet when I truly listened, you were always those important things I forgot to buy at any store. Labor Day Moods was recently written, and it kind of reflects on childhood memories of the end of summer and its influence later on in our adulthood. There are flu-like symptoms when pinching sinuses sting a hint of fall, dizzying, a light-headed hum inside an ice cream headache. Young boys, zippering cotton jackets in the chilly August dusk, spent time of purple silence calling them inside from play. Mother took every opportunity to tell us school was only days away, mentioning this sentence in an ordered pace, like a judge would have us think he simply reads the law. She tested ballpoint pens on doodle paper, and Father whittled down 3 pencils with the small blade of his pocket knife. He tried to make me laugh with several eraser jokes, as if he might have understood that September robbed me of the summer, making daydreams out of what could have been, but wasn't in the fall. I envied everyone whose Mondays were predictable. Grandparents who woke before dawn but relapsed in the pillowed sitting room for a brief snooze after half a cup of brew. I never doubted that they'd be there when I had children, sharing giggled whispers in this artistry of saying what they should while not believing it at all. Title, and I chose the title for the film from one of the more recent poems I had written. It's called Fading to Zero, and It comes out of my own early experiences as being of mixed background in a homogeneous adopted family, and the influence of the amount of Native American that is in my veins. I'm often daydreamed in a fluted memory of tribes which once were nations. Now they tapestry and makeshift souvenir dolls sold by those who clutch a cloud of my identity, mixed African and white, held to their heritage mostly by the geography of reservations. Some break cheap wine bottles on rusty, wrecked, tireless cars, tilting inebriated in their hopelessness, reflected in their socket stares of silence and broken headlights, looking blind since birth. Strangers tell me I have good color, and I laugh because I never take the sun in summer. I shave less frequently than others above my lip and on my chin, and hardly ever razor the few turkey hairs sprouting out from my face. I'm a hybrid of unresolved bastardry, fractioned into superficial evidence, like a mongrel whose one or two distinctive traits tie it to a pedigree lost somewhere in an elusive past. I'm thinking of my grandchildren. All my progeny will forget the flute or feathered headdress as they become engulfed inside guitars, strumming an alien legacy.
This is about my feelings. I realized my whole life, which is short of a better word, were anarchistic. Instabilities. Seen from the same park bench, the sky alternates a no man's land, where sometimes pigeons winging in flight appear much like gulls, or the other way around. As a child, I was enthralled by confusion, racing out of rooms where the periodic chart of the elements was tacked to walls with omnipotent certainty. I welcomed any conversation with flippant people, untreated for bipolar mood shifts. Those mournful on a perfect day in May and manicked by a snowstorm. So I often turned away when close inspection would magnify the identity of every fauna and flora, which, despite my severe myopia, I wish you know, I saw with close to perfect vision. All those cloudy days in warmer months, when daylight blends twilight imperceptibly, and seconds drag like minutes and hours confuse the twilight. The exactitude of sunset, compounded as if winter was somehow settling in, breaking all the rules I've always hated.
overfilled Zippo lighter, vats of smoking acid bellowing like charcoal chested a probing finger on my lungs. In the truck cabs, we talked about our families like home-cooked meals, as if we were arriving back from a tour of outer space. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I still can see waitresses lighting cigarettes in Jersey parking lots where nothing grows. And my last poem is dedicated to an uncle of mine, John Joseph Lohr, who passed on 30 years ago. It's called The Greatest Beatnik. He was a sailor most of his life, and only a meat lugger on the Lower East Side of Manhattan when he couldn't find a ship. He made me understand how a man could own his living room without bravado or conceit. His Irish tenor voice took me with him west of the Great Divide, and I stood watch beside him in those darkest North Atlantic days when Allied ships were untended prey. He lived inside an American past, a haunting, humble majesty where plain men alone made it strong, imperfect as his prejudice and as lofty to anyone in trouble. Perhaps his vices cut his life short, but they also made him stand both above but well inside a pack already quite extinct. I'm sure he never understood that he was the greatest beatnik next to Kerouac. And I excuse the borough president. I just Bernadette already. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Marty.
I see the passion. I must tell you, Ken, that this morning I was at a brand new, beautiful, beautiful new library, one of the first new ones, PS 145, in the heart of Bushwick, provided by UBS, the corporation, and Robin Hood. And they did a great job in the renovation. And prior to the official ribbon cutting, they had several students on stage, each with their poetry. And I have to tell you that poetry is alive and well and growing, starting with our kids in every community across the city of Brooklyn. And under your leadership, Ken, I made a very good appointment when I made this appointment. Yeah. I got to thank my leaders, Pearl and Michael, who made this recommendation, and Michael, and the councilman, Michael Nelson, who stands beside me here. And to say that Michael, both Jamie and I express sympathy for the loss of your dad. Believe me, we know what it's like to lose someone very close. My wife lost both her mother and father in 3 weeks apart at the end of June and July. And you hear about it, but when it impacts your own family, it certainly is some experience. Let me also say that I want to wish Ken well. I know that you have a special award here for Bernadette Salem. Right. And so Bernadette, if I may, make this presentation on behalf of the chief here, the poet laureate, and myself, to the from the entire borough team. Congratulations. Finally, I know that the movies are not like poetry, but some of you already followed my career a little bit, and I work on many different levels of interest. As long as it impacts Brooklyn, and certainly one of those things is a lifelong dream. Not the most important, for sure, but it seems to me that when movie premieres occur in America, it's usually in California. And when they make a movie premiere, it's usually in Manhattan. But the time is certainly long overdue for the city of Brooklyn. And all I can say for those of you that are interested in that kind of a thing, with the red
In those years, July parasited August, and beef stew fumes of potted goulash, cabbage scent squeezed through brown apartment doors in red-eye of provincial recipes mingling different Eastern European daydreams, while I hunched a guess at Poland's secretive ingredients in a border war with Hungary. Imagining dried paprika bloodstains, which convinced me that coloring had everything to do with different tastes. Tank top, white undershirt, uniformed men with suspenders of immigrants, nicknamed pale factory lugs, workers who in a few short years lunched the origins of the CIO. They booted up the stone-cold building stairs with brown paper envelopes on Friday, tips and wages ransomed by heavy-breathing, tired old men elbowing the daily papers, espousing each one's politics. The mundane, pictured common sense of the Daily News and Mirror, or the Americanization of social justice translated by Lerner and Kempton in the New York Evening Post. Daring efforts to titillate perhaps a Trotskyite position, disguised by Socratic questioning, to tap into their father's syncretism of socialism and patriotic justice. Equality won its major important victory through machines, high-dramatic family cars revolutionizing a woman's place on the streets and highways. Mostly it was the guarded whispers and sideways looks of the vast array of Russian jewelry, swallowing hard while ingesting fear of Joe McCarthy's America, challenging their best efforts at assimilation with Julius and Ethel's show trial, shadowing their every thought and conversation. Abandoned, adopted, illegitimate children in the post-World War II world. And I can only seem to express some of these feelings by making it analogous to pound mongrels, dogs at the ASPCA. Mongrels. The pound mongrel has no birthday, only a guess of the month or season when he pink-mouthed yelped, springing to life. Those like him possessed the lonely isolation of a fertile steppe ravaged by repeated arson, demanding indelible loyalty only to their zodiac. Charlie's thick rope chain hooks a trinket like a water bearer, or perhaps blind justice brandishing her scale, but as sightless to themselves as they are blind to everyone. They clasp their origins devoid of ethnicity or a surname, much like February is my month, but it must be either Pisces or Aquarius, never both. I name him from the intersection where they found him, glued to oily newspapers and litter mates collapsing in a bloated cardboard box. We all tackle our existence through the hand-me-downs of others. The only constant, our sign, the only certainty, vignettes told to us by others. Thanks for that. And with that, I guess I'd like to read one further thing. I was very moved at the book fair, and I was asked to promote a poem and about the life of a young man who in October was, in August, was killed in a mail truck accident. He was a young biker. His name was Xander Toulouse. And his father was a Fordham professor, and he was trailing behind his father's bike on a corner where I believe 88 accidents have been going on until very recently. And from what his teachers, parents, schoolmates, principals say about him, and reading his poem that he wrote in the first grade, I was so moved that I must give you that, because he is so much of the best in what Brooklyn is. Xander was so much to so many. Perceptive, generous, kind. So passionate, so animated, so electric. An incomparable bundle of energy, talent, and creativity, and intellect who touched us all in such profound ways. Xander was one of a kind. He was driven by a singular curiosity about the way things worked, about life, about people. Above all, Xander understood and appreciated where he came from and what he had in his life. He had a strong sense of gratitude and truly saw the miracles in his young life. How lucky he was to have a family that gave him such a place to be himself. Xander, who had just started 3rd grade at PS 29 in Cobble Hill, wrote this poem in the first grade. It shares and celebrates from his own mind who he was and the influence that shaped his one-of-a-kind identity. There's no one like me. Nobody's like me. For all my special reasons. For example, a board game. To me, there's nothing as nice as a nice board game. I always like my bathwater hot. I always like trains. I love to dance a lot. Blue is my favorite color. I am the pride of the world. I know I can be a problem, but I am very useful sometimes. Chairs, as if the rest of Brooklyn and the city had long gone to hell around them, never touching their Sundays, stirred into their gravy with the determination of a chef, conjuring the secret mix of ingredients locked up in the long-term memories of the race. And always, it was the fathers, grandfathers, and all their sons conceived in parked Buicks with the passion of hot-blooded Romeos who never read Shakespeare or heard of the Renaissance, but picked their Juliets out of convent homes just a few blocks away. Thanks a lot for giving me the chance. Carlos not here? Oh, Carlos, I'm going to kill you. All right, we'll go to the open mic.
Feeling that my days are numbered, before they realize I will also fill a dumpster, ignored by everyone who lives past me, blinded by the fate of broken toys and new ones in the window.
Docudrama made about his life fading to zero. Where are you, Ken? Congratulations. Ken Siegelman. We all know that Brooklynites have the unique ability to make just about